Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unmodern Podcast, the podcast where we have unscripted, unapologetic, and uncomfortable conversations that affects everyday people. If you've ever had an outlook, thought, or an opinion that modern day society told you to be silent on, that you would get in trouble for, or if you've ever heard the words, probably shouldn't say that, then this is the podcast for you. My name is Alfred, a husband, father, and an adventure-seeking kind of guy who over the years has learned to have a positive outlook on life, regardless of what society throws at me. So if you're ready to listen, let's go. Aaron, thank you for coming on the podcast, sir. I'm really excited for this conversation. I love the messaging you bring. Recently listened to your podcast episode with Trevor Turnbull, a mutual friend of ours. I'm really excited for this one, man. How you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
So I'll let you kind of explain to the listeners here what you bring to the table and what your messaging is, and then we're going to unpack it a little bit. I really want to dive into this. This is super important. This is, I mean, depending on who you talk to, but this is arguably top one or two problems that we have in the world today is, male mental health and more specifically depression and anxiety. And I would love to unpack that, but give a little bit of background, what you bring to the table, and we'll start unpacking all that for you.
Yeah. I struggled with depression and anxiety for many, many years. And so in 2018, I founded Engage Coaching Group and I've been coaching men since then and educating them in a variety of ways, just giving them an opportunity to find ways to connect to their authentic self and be able to thrive in their personal, professional, and family life.
To hear that you started this before COVID, because COVID is such a milestone for a lot of people in terms of government, mental health, income, inflation. I mean, you can almost name it, right? People kind of put that mile marker around that 2020 date line and then moving forward. So to know that you did that before COVID is pretty proactive. It almost seems almost pioneering to a degree. I know this stuff is been talked about for a long time, but this is pretty fantastic that you kind of had your head in the door before the world basically imploded and this became an epidemic. That's pretty incredible, man. So yeah, kudos to you. That's fantastic.
Well, thanks. And that interview with the podcast with Trevor that you mentioned, that podcast, Your Gifts Matter, I actually started during COVID because I wanted to find a way to get the message out there. Being cooped up in my house all day, it's like I need to find a way to help more men and people that are dealing with mental health challenges. So that's where that podcast actually was sparked during COVID.
Yeah, like a lot of creatives these days, it seems like a lot
Yeah.
of stuff was created during that, right? At times of struggle, usually that's when the best things are created. Really interesting. If you don't mind unpacking, when you say you struggle with depression, do you mind sharing kind of, that whole journey for you coming, dealing with something on the flip side and then wanting to transition from a somebody who suffers from it to somebody who wanted to be a healer of it? I'm really interested in that transition.
Yeah, looking back, I was never diagnosed in high school, but pretty certain that I struggled with it in high school. I played basketball and volleyball in high school, and at the senior level, I played basketball. I loved playing sports, absolutely loved playing sports in junior high school. But then when I hit grade 11 and 12, the pressure completely changed and the level of playing changed. I grew up in a small community of 10,000 people. And when I was in that senior year, our coach liked to take us down to the lower mainland to Vancouver to play teams. They play every week. We played maybe every second weekend against the smaller communities, near Williams Lake where I grew up. But coming down to the lower mainland, like the level of play just increased. We actually played against Steve Nash when he was in high school, when I was in grade 12 at the provincials, because we were the last place team in the province and we had to play number one, St. Michael's University, to kick it off. And what an experience. They completely destroyed us by about 20 or 30 points, but incredible experience to play against that team. But the level of play was high. And I didn't respond well to being yelled at and screamed at when every time I made a mistake. And so that type of approach with me, whether it was with a coach or a teacher or a friend, just kind of actually internally caused me to go inside of myself and, just kind of be in this dark place for moments, periods of time for, 2, 3 weeks, couple months. And I remember in high school, wondering, okay, when is this dark cloud going to go away? Because when it did go away, I felt amazing. I felt confident. My sense of humor would come out. I just, there's no worries at all. But then I would drop into these periods where, and a lot of the time it was during the winter months too, when it would happen. And so into university, it continued. And see, this basketball coach, he did teach me one thing that I found really helpful. I didn't understand it at the time. He told us as we were stretching at the gym and just, we all stood in a circle at the middle of the basketball court and did our stretches, and one of us led them. He'd walk behind us and he'd say 80% of the game is between your ears. 80% of the game is between your ears. And then after we were done stretching, we would then move on to offensive drills, defensive plays, shooting, dribbling, all the physical and strategic sides of the game. He never explained that statement to me. And in high school, I thought I needed to run faster, jump higher, get back on defense, and shoot better. I didn't understand this mental side. He didn't, and he put any context to it. He just kept saying this statement with no explanation. And it took me to university to actually understand it and connect to it because I was focused on the physical side of the game. And so I started to really look at my thoughts more and journal a lot. And that's when I saw a therapist for the first time and did it in secret back in the 90s. Didn't tell anybody that I was going to see a therapist. And actually, that therapist, after a couple sessions, it took a lot to go to that therapist for the first time. It was nerve wracking. And I was like doing this in secret between my classes at university, finding times to go see them. And then he encouraged me to go to a group therapy session after seeing him twice. And that, he wanted me to go and talk about all this stuff with a group of other people. No, I'm not going to do that. But of course, that's what I ended up stepping into right there. And actually, I didn't get as much out of the group. I did get some out of it, but I found I was actually in such fear around sharing what was going on for me that it took a lot until I graduated university and I started to get more help. And I just became fascinated with mindset and psychology. I was in sales a lot, so there's a lot of training on that. But I just would continue to go down these dark periods, and I'd go to therapy for 6 months, feel great, and then I'd stop going, right? Or I'd be on medication for a bit, antidepressant, feel great, and then go off of it, and then so every 6 months, a year, I'd be falling back into the same kind of dark space.
Wow, thanks for sharing that, man. That's back in the 90s, I imagine. I mean, in the 90s, I was in junior high. I'm a little younger. I remember school counselors. I actually remember it vividly when I was in junior high. I was struggling with, getting introduced to marijuana and getting introduced to social circles and, female rejection and social circle rejection and failing grades and stuff. And I remember going to school counselor, which was really my introduction to a kind of a Jordan Peterson type, authority mentorship, I guess would be the best way to describe that for
Mm.
me. And I remember that helped me a lot. It helped me where it helped calm me down. It was a very small room, quiet room. And honestly, I did 95% of the talking. And it was just incredible to be able to just have somebody who was not family, not a friend, and no skin in the game. I knew the feedback I was getting was genuine. That's the word I would use, is it wasn't that fatherly love where it would be like, oh yeah, no, you're good, or oh, don't worry about it. It was, you're failing your grades. You got to study more. Like it was pretty straightforward, but not in an abusive way, not in an aggressive way. It was very positive, very uplifting of me at the time. But I remember, like, I don't remember words like depression and anxiety being discussed when I was in junior high or even high school. These things, these words weren't used very much. It was more, I'm depressed or I'm anxious. There wasn't the shin or the itty at the end of it where it became chronic. It was more of an acute issue where something is causing me issues. Maybe it's minus 40 in northern Alberta for me when you don't see the sun for a while and you need to supplement vitamin D. Maybe that's why I'm a little depressed. But that whole depression and stuff didn't happen and didn't have a highlight for me until just before COVID. I would say about 2016 to 2018, somewhere in that window is really when it exploded. And I don't know what your experience is with that, but maybe your transition from when you seen that therapist to when you started engaged coaching in 2018, what was that journey like that brought you to really, I think I can bring some value to this because I've overcame this. I have a little bit of, methods and I have some strategies to help combat this.
Yeah, I was in sales positions for, as I mentioned, in many years of my career, And that I felt the pressure in that, just similar to that I felt in playing basketball. And so when that pressure hit, the way I responded to it is I just went inside and I kind of froze and didn't know how to move forward and didn't know how to ask for help a lot of the times, or didn't talk about it with my colleagues or my manager. I go get help behind the scenes, but I still was going to work and wearing a mask and not really knowing how to, you know, how to share that, I'm struggling here and maybe I'm not in the right career. Maybe I'm not, this is not right for me because I was in a toxic sales environment in a lot of cases where, I just wanted to help people. I just wanted to educate and support the customers that I was working with. And of course, behind the scenes, I got people telling me that you got to close this and that and this many and it's just not, it was the ethical way that I wanted to do it. And at 37 years old, I was in the deepest, darkest depression that I probably ever faced ever. And at that point, my first marriage was breaking down. My oldest son at the time, he was just about getting close to 2 years old. And so everything was falling apart. And so to go from just kind of struggling at work to now everything is collapsing, I didn't know what, who I was and what was wrong with me. And that's actually one of the questions I was trying to solve. I remember being in the basement suite of this townhouse that I owned at the time, in the basement part of the townhouse, and in the evenings go into my computer and essentially just typing in what's wrong with me and trying to answer that question, like trying to find all these solutions to what's wrong. Why aren't I confident enough? Why aren't I stepping up as a man that everybody else is expecting me to be? What's going on here? How come I'm feeling so weak? And I'm always being diplomatic. I'm not expressing my opinion. I'm people pleasing. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just be confident and just make a decision and move forward with things? And it was at that point where I realized I actually went to a Hay House event where Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson were speaking, some other speakers. And that weekend, it shifted things for me because after hearing them speak, I'd always wanted to hear from Wayne and kind of get his insights and that. But walking away from that, I did some journaling from there, and I realized I've been asking myself the wrong question for a long. And I was asking that question, what's wrong with me, for years leading up to that being 37. I was asking my question, even if it was subconsciously along the way. But I realized I needed to ask myself, what is this for? There's got to be a reason that I'm going through this. There's got to be a gift in there somewhere. Even if I'm only 10% of me is believing there's a gift there, there's got to be something that's in this for me. And I got to change my perspective. I got to look at this differently. And and at that point I found a therapist that actually understood what I was going through. A lot of times I just went and saw the therapist that was in the back then top of the yellow pages or, in the Google searches top of the list. But I actually searched out and found somebody that understood the anxiety and the depression I was going through and the kind of the situations is for, related to work, related to relationships. And that therapist and teachers that I met, because I ended up taking a program, a personal growth program that I actually got a counseling diploma from it, they all kind of helped me look at depression differently. And because they asked me, what is depression for me? And I explained to them it's that dark cloud that's over my head, that everything seems bleak, everything seems impossible, everything like is so hard to do anything, to get up in the morning, to put my suit on back then, and the jobs I was in, it seemed like it would take me hours to get ready and then to put a mask on essentially at work to play this role that inside I'm just struggling. But they then said, yeah, that's definitely your experience of depression. That makes sense. They also said there's another way to look at depression. And I said, okay, well, what's that? And they said it's depression is anger turned inward. Anger turned inward. And at that moment, that was actually I needed to hear that. And it landed for me because sometimes people would give advice or say something like that to me, and I would be like, okay, sure. And then I'd move on. But everything kind of aligned when I heard that because I realized that I've been stuffing anger and I didn't know how to express it. I thought I was bad. I was wrong. There was something wrong with me if I was ever angry, and that people would leave me or I'd get fired or, no one would like me if I expressed any anger. That's what I was believing for so many years. And so I learned how to safely and effectively release that anger. And through that counseling program that I did, that's where I was inspired to, okay, because there was a few of us men in that program, and the women that were hearing that I was fellow students with, they were hearing about the struggles we were going through, and they were understanding men better, and it made myself and my fellow colleagues there like we got to do something. We got to help more men with this. And so that's what inspired me to start Engage Coaching Group and to be able to step in and help more men and support them with, going through similar things that I went through. So that being in a toxic work environment, struggling in their relationship and not knowing how to lead, being a people pleaser, and not accessing their anger effectively, and knowing how to that because the same energy the energy and the effectiveness of anger is like passion and anger are very similar. So you can be passionate and you don't have to be angry, but the energy is very similar in how you express that. And so it doesn't have to be a bad thing to express that passion. You don't want to be, you don't want to judge people, you don't want to attack people with it, but you want to know how to release it and understand that there's emotions underneath that anger that if you don't feel them, you're not going to be able to be your authentic self. You're not going to be able to actually access the core of who you are. Is what I believe anyway.
I've never heard that definition. Now, do you think that's an accurate description of depression generalized, or do you think everybody's experience and source code of depression is a little bit different? I imagine the triggers and what maybe starts it is different, but do you think that anger turned inward is really what defines general depression for most people?
I think for me, because when I talk about depression, I'm referring more to situational depression because I'm not a psychologist, and I know that there's people that are really struggling with major depression in that. So when I refer to depression, it's depression that comes about from a situation. So you're in that toxic work environment. You've lost your job. You've lost your relationships broken down. You've lost a loved one. Like there's a situation that comes up that then puts you into that state, and and it could be anger that people aren't feeling. It could be any emotion that they're not feeling. Because underneath anger is sadness, is can be guilt and shame. And to me, depression is it's tied to anger, as my experience, but it also is tied to just being able to feel your feelings. Because if you're suppressing any feelings, you're going to stay stuck in that place for longer until you allow. For me, when I released the anger, sadness was there, and I had all this sadness that was tied to the loss of my grandfather when I was 10 that I never felt for like completely grieved, uh, when I was younger, and I didn't connect the dots to that until I allowed the sadness to come up.
When you feel confident talking about depression or coaching people through depression or feeling, able and willing to help people with this, what do you leverage more? Do you leverage your experience with depression, or do you leverage your counseling diploma and your formal education? Is it a 50-50 split? Do you feel like if you had one but not the other, it would change? And if so, if there is one, what do you think kind of validates your ability to really confidently and successfully coach people through these really, hard mental health issues?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of my experience and the skills that I've learned. The program that I went through was experiential, so we actually learned, like for example, the releasing anger exercise that I learned. There's a couple of ways of doing it. One is in person with somebody as a partner, and another is a journaling exercise where you do on your own. And when you do it with a partner, it's called a four step. And in four steps, you're essentially releasing that anger and then getting to the truth of what's actually going on. So that first step in the fourth step is you have someone standing across from you, and you're just letting out verbally that anger. And the person that's your partner really has to be able to be solid enough to be able to receive that, because sometimes, people, you know, there could be some stuff that are really coming up. And so you just let that anger out. You communicate it and you just get it to come up. And then the second step is, what am I actually feeling underneath this anger? And so it's looking at this, whether it's sadness or what's anger is the surface emotion. So what's the actual feeling underneath that, and allowing that emotion to come up. And then it's a just like when. So going back to, when was the first time you felt, whether it's, let's say it's sadness, when was the first time you felt this sadness, to connect the dots to that there could be some grieving, or maybe you were told that, a lot of guys were told at a young age that you're not supposed to be crying, stop crying. And so there could be some shame around that. And then the third step is around what false belief are you believing about yourself? So what I'm actually believing about myself is I'm not good enough, or I'm bad. I'm wrong. Like I was thinking I was bad for many years for if I was going to be angry, right? And then the final step is what's actually true. What's true about me about this situation, or this, what's happening for me right now, and getting to the truth and connecting to that, whether you're connecting to believing 10% of that truth or 100%, but as long as you're connecting to that truth, and you can work through that exercise a number of times. But that's so I learned a different techniques and experiential types of exercises that I think has helped me, in addition to my experience, and to be able to relate to the guys that I help, but also be able to help them, invite them to look at really getting to feeling those feelings that maybe they haven't been wanting to feel for a while, or be able to at least talk about things they haven't been able to talk with other people about. And it's not like it's going to necessarily immediately happen. It's a progression. It depends on the individual as to how much they're willing to share, and then kind of being able to be present with them in a safe way is like however they were able to show up and what they're able to bring in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. The reason I
Yeah.
asked that question is I find a lot nowadays people question your credentials. What makes you qualified to speak on an issue, talk about an issue, or even have an opinion on an issue? And it's been my kind of observation that experience always gives people a leg up from a formal education or some sort of an authority figure telling you that you are now qualified to be in this position. Listen, there's no substitute for proper training for things like doctors and lawyers and all that stuff. But when we dig into the minutia of humans, right, and you talk about health issues, you talk about dealing with, just society in general, life problems, to me, experience is everything. And I feel like that gives people really the kind of the acronyms at the end of their name, right? To be able to speak to that. It's like if I'm going to go to the gym and I want to get fit, I don't want somebody who has 8 years of formal training at Harvard but just got out a week ago. I'm going to go talk to the guy that's been working out for 8 years, and the proof is in the pudding. Now, is what he's doing perfect for me? Likely not. But I feel like from an efficiency and a more streamlined trajectory to my desired finish line, that's the guy that is going to help me get to where I want to go. So similarly to your situation, the fact that your formal training had a degree of experience training in it, to me speaks more volumes than if you say were a clinical psychologist or something. Not to undermine that, but I feel like there's value in that you've gone through the ringer, and now somebody's not starting at ground zero. They may be starting at maybe your midpoint. You're now at, say, chapter 20 or 30 of your story. They might be at chapter one, but you can really fast track them a little bit, maybe chapter five, chapter six, and be like, no, I don't want you to go down the learning how not to do this. Let's teach you how to do this and see if this is right for you. I don't know what your opinion on that
Yeah.
is.
Well, yeah, that's what it speaks to my own journey when I was getting help. A lot of times the psychologist that I was referred to was from my doctor, and these psychologists never shared their personal journey, their experience with depression. It was just all exercises and book smarts, and which was there's something to that. And that actually the Feeling Good book was the first self-help book that I was introduced to that really helped me when I first was going through my depression in that. But that's when I went to that dark depression at 37. That's where I realized that I could actually ask the therapist that I was seeing is, okay, so tell me about how you've personally experienced this. And I actually witnessed this in sessions with the newer counselor that I saw, is she would actually share with me her own experience, which actually helped me connect better to her and relate to her more, because knowing that she had been through that, it's not like she's talking about her story the whole time, but there's just little indicators of that knowing, and the little examples of stories that it goes a long way. Because yeah, if somebody's just coming right out of school and is book smart, how are they going to be able to help somebody that's really dealing with something tough if they haven't gone through it themselves? And that's actually when I went through the counseling program, they kept teaching us that if you want to be able to counsel people, the more that you step into your own stuff that you're dealing with, the better you're going to be prepared to be able to support people as a counselor or as I'm a life coach, be able to help them in that because the level that you access your own your own false beliefs and darkness but within yourself is going to you heal that, then you're going to be able to now be able to heal others because of it. So it's huge. Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
experience component makes it relate at a human level. It goes from being told from an authoritative figure or an
Yeah.
authoritative position to relating one on one. And I think that's so important, right? And not to say again that there's not a place for that. I just know it's been my experience that when I'm dealing with something so sensitive like human emotion, mental health issues, personal issues,
Yeah.
I feel like I'd rather be feel like I'm on a level playing field and feel like somebody else has gone through it or something similar that it's like we can kind of suffer together there's a calming in that for me, if that makes any
Definitely.
sense. But
Definitely.
that's personally for me. Some people wouldn't agree, but that's always been
Yeah.
my thing. I want to unpack a little bit that anger turned inward, and I love that, by the way. And then you had mentioned that there's emotions underneath it, like guilt, sadness. Has it been your experience as a strategy for anybody listening, if they are dealing with depression, do you deal with the surface level anger first and then you kind of just chip away? Or do you want to get to the root cause? Because I feel like just thinking of this off the top of my head, I feel like going from the top down, surface level in, doesn't feel as daunting. You're not going from massive depression to just like almost imploding because you have this plethora of emotion. So it feels more attainable, but it's maybe the longer way where from an efficiency standpoint in my head, just how I think, I feel like if you went to the source, that would get you out of your funk or out of your current predicament quicker, but it's a bigger Mount Everest to climb. What's kind of been your experience with that? And I'm sure the strategies for both, but just if you can share your experience coaching people, what has been more successful, if any?
I think it's taking it one step at a time, depending on the individual, but really, the gradual progression. Because if you jump too soon to the source, there's all these other feelings and things that may be bypassed, right? So my own experience and what I've seen guys benefit from is actually stepping into what's present in those feelings now, and because that skipping ahead is kind of trying to find you know, trying to get to the end result, but there's still a journey to experience, right? So there, because I still, I was speaking on a live Facebook group earlier this week, and I was talking about my grandfather and actually explaining that journaling exercise, the other way of dealing with anger. And I hit emotions and sadness about my grandfather just doing the talk. And so there's still healing that I'm doing with regard to the grieving of him that shows up. And I think it's always good to be gentle with yourself, and it's not about getting to the destination. It's about healing along the way, whatever's showing up, and taking it at a pace that makes sense for yourself, but also not letting the ego want you to just get to the finish line, because that there could be other things that are just going to keep showing up if you try to get to the source. Now there is all kinds of modalities out there, and different ways of getting to the source, so to speak. But I've found just being gentle with myself and with my clients, and allowing them just to move through things as they feel is right for them is seems to work the best at this point. Yeah.
Oh, appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I imagine the approach is different on the individual, but that kind of softer, more the longer approach, but maybe more systemic seems to just from thinking off the top of my head, likely would be more successful long term.
Long
Because
term.
even if you get stagnated halfway through, you've at least made progress. Where if you try to hit a home run right away, it's either going to work or not, and that can be possibly setting people down an even darker, deeper path.
Yeah, because well, I'm going to be 50 in, I guess, 6 days. So I've reflecting a lot on things, and I believed for so many years that I just needed to get to the destination. And once I felt, once I reached the confidence and the self-esteem and the happiness and joy and all that, that it would just remain there forever. Once I attained it, I've got the destination, and it's all good. But what I've recognized over the last decade is just, and even more so in the last year, is that life is the workshop, right? Like every moment that we're experiencing is an opportunity to grow. And the more that I step into that and help others step into that, and knowing that you're going to constantly be growing while we're here, right? And every moment that shows up is just another moment to be able to decide how you want to respond to that, someone attacking you or somebody saying something nice to you or whatever that is. The the moments are going to be the learning. Is there is the destination is going to come, but there's still those learnings along the way, and it's more of a journey for sure. And life really, to me, I've just this last couple of weeks just really reflecting on it. You don't necessarily need going to a workshop can be beneficial, but actually practicing what you learn in life is the real workshop. What I've recognized.
Yeah, doing the work, right? It's
Yeah,
you know, you can talk the talk or you can walk the walk, right?
yeah,
I'd love to unpack the statement that your coach told you back playing basketball, 80% of
yeah.
the game is between your ears. You said
Mhm.
that he'd never really unpacked that for you. What's your definition of that? Like if you had to put kind of if somebody was saying like, what does that mean? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, it's the mental side of playing sports and also the mental side of life. It's really that those thoughts, those beliefs, and those values that are not tangible that impact performance and how you step into things and how you play a sport or how you live your life. And those thoughts, those beliefs and values can impact, your current situation, where you're at, and how you're experiencing, whether you're playing on the basketball court or you're in a relationship or how you're performing at work, yeah, or how you're being a parent.
Yeah, I agree. The mental game is really important. The reason I asked that is I was introduced to a concept called rumination. I don't know if you know what that is.
No, no.
Yeah, so there was a girl, published author on Joe Rogan. Her name is Abigail Shire, and she was talking. She wrote a book called Irreversible Damage. I have not read the book, but I listened to the podcast,
Okay.
and she talked about a concept called rumination, and she believes that is the source of depression. She
Okay.
believes that is what propagates depression from coming in a surface emotion, or let's say it's an anger or a guilt or a trigger, and that's what causes it to go from being depressed to depression. And I'm
Hmm.
going to read you the definition of that. And this is from the Cambridge Dictionary. Rumination is the tendency to focus passively and repetitively on one's symptoms of depression. And
Hmm.
the way she unpacked it is she said, if you continually think about your depression and you think about the possible outcomes or the possible reasons for depression, it will actually make it worse on a compounding scale. And she said, so when we say 80% is between the ears, I don't want that to steer people in the wrong direction of you need to think about your depression 80% of the time and try to come up with a mental solution to it. I think everything we've discussed here is taking that statement of, sports performance or life. Yes, 80% of between your ears, but I think there's an asterisk with that is you got to have the right positive or optimistic mindset towards it. You can't think your way out of depression. I think it's very possible to think your way deeper into it, but I don't think it's possible to think your way out of that mental health issue. That's my personal opinion. But it was a really good podcast. I'd recommend listening to it because she had some pretty
Yeah.
thought provoking stuff on that. But I just wanted to get like what are your thoughts on a definition of something referred to as rumination and kind of thinking about your problems and thinking about things. I can really see how that would set somebody down a dark path.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like to me, it's to get out of depression, you got to feel your way out of it. Yeah, thinking your way out of it is it may get you so far, but because you can start feeling good and everything's great, and then you stop doing everything that you had learned to get to that place. So no, there's something to be said about that because uh, and when in my book, Engage, Connect, Grow, the engage section of the book is all around becoming aware of the thoughts, the beliefs that are going on, and and definitely when I talk about being engaged, it's around being aware. So you do have to, when we talk about 80% of the game, your life is in between your ears. It's an awareness piece of recognizing that if you're in that pattern of negativity and replaying, that to be able to step out of that and to recognize it. And that can actually that's a muscle to work, is to know that when you're going down that path and that you're in that cycle of negativity and analyzing, because for some people that's just a pattern, and to be able to take a step back from that and say, hang on a second here, why am I going down this path of analyzing this right now? This is not getting me anywhere. Like that's a skill set in its own. And then be able to take that and step into the feelings versus getting wrapped up in the thoughts, right? And also, connecting to the values and beliefs and the feelings associated with those. So if I want to be happy, if I value happiness, how can I feel happy in this moment? How can I access 20%, 50%, 80% happiness in this moment instead of going down this rabbit hole of negativity?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Mindset is very important, but I think what people don't understand, like, or people don't unpack a lot of stuff is they say it's in your head, it's in your head, or it's mindset, or it's a mental game.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of positivity and optimism. I
Yeah.
think you have to see a glass half full. You have to water your own grass rather than looking on the other side of the
Yeah.
fence. I describe myself to my wife as a professional optimist, and we did a podcast lately, and she called it my toxic positivity. She's like, "You're too positive." I'm like, "I don't think there's such thing, but it's a
Mhm.
bit much for her, and it can kind of be annoying." But like, what's the alternative to that? I'm toxically negative, and I'm always down. Like,
Right.
I don't want to really associate with that. I want to get your opinion on kind of modern approaches and kind of opinions on depression that kind of pushes or it kind of challenges the narrative. So Andrew Tate, popular online personality, people love him, people hate him, the guy's whatever. He says depression doesn't exist. And he
Mm.
gave a metaphor of the way depression works is if you have a haunted house and you put one person who's scared of ghosts and one person who's not, they're in it and they hear a bang, the person who's scared of ghosts is going to run out and the other person's going to say, it's the wind and go back to bed. And then Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, said that depression's a luxury. You don't hear of depression in third world countries or Compton or people within poverty. That vocabulary doesn't exist.
Mm.
What's your opinion on that when we talk about depression? Because I know my experience is depression is recent vocabulary. It hasn't like I haven't heard about it since I think I said about 2016, 2018 in that time frame. What's your opinion on that? Do you think depression, similar to how anger hides other emotions, do you think depression is a word or a symptom of something else? Do you think depression exists as it is depression, or do you think people are depressed and not really dealing with again the source code or the root issue with that?
Yeah, it's definitely there's the root of, and I believe that the core root is unconditional love. If if somebody's not able to access unconditional love for themselves and others, and unsure how to get to that point, that's I think we're all to me that's where we're all trying to get to a place where we can love ourselves and anybody else, no matter what, like who they are, where they live, their opinions or what have you. And so, similar to what you said there, like the depression, I don't remember it ever being talked about as a kid, and it's definitely become more of a common language. And I think it's not in some ways it's nice to have something to be able to call it, because I think before as a guy, it was avoided. You don't mention that. You don't talk about it. At least we can actually have something we can say that we're going through. But I do feel it's for me it's real. Like it's definitely, and I have still gone through depression in the last number of years. Like it doesn't hasn't completely gone away. But I have been listening more to yogis like Michael Singer and different spiritual experts and thought leaders in that around spirituality, and that has opened me up to recognizing that there is a choice, and that depression could just be it could be just the ego deciding us to keep us stuck, and that there's a choice to be made of, and it's more to that workshop, life being the workshop, is that in this moment, how do who do I want to be in this moment, and do I want to go down that dark fearful place, or do I just want to accept the reality of what's happening right now, and not make it mean anything? Because I think that there's a lot of meaning that's attached to what people say and what people do and things that happen, where it's just something that happened. I mean, it's just this is unfolded in front of me. It's happened, and how I respond to that, how I react to that internally is an opportunity for to get curious as to how come I'm getting how come I'm getting frustrated about what they said to me when they said it. I didn't say anything. Like it's not they can say whatever they want about me, but how come it's really hitting me inside? And get curious about that and heal that versus attacking that person and drilling into them when is that how you really want to be? Is that how you want to actually be in the world? Right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think it kind of does. It's just kind of a thought-provoking thought where I think vocabulary has been hijacked
yeah,
recently, right? I'm definitely not going to unpack that in any way, shape, or form,
yeah.
but it's people can recognize that really, words aren't meaning words, or new things come out to describe new things, or somebody comes out with a definition that's different than the traditional definition, but it's supposed to be modern. My personal opinion is I have found the best way to handle being depressed or low moments in my life, and I'm going to say the number three or the top three things. Number one is connection, like
Mhm.
bar none, hands down. It's not even a question. That's multifaceted because you have family, you have friends, and social circles and whatnot. I know as men, and we're going to focus on that because that's really we're two men talking and focusing on men's mental health, coming off the heels of Movember. For me, it's been my brothers. And when I say brothers, I mean like my brothers in arms, like my close friends that I would. It's basically my family, but that I didn't choose or that I chose.
Mhm.
It's those guys that I've gone through the trenches with that's where I've found my best source and outlet for getting through things. I would say the second is a positive mindset is and where my positive mindset comes from is ultra accountability. I'll give an example. My washer let go a month ago and flooded my house, and my wife and I have been out of our house for a month.
Mhm.
Fun. I would not recommend it
Yeah.
to anybody. And when it happened, I told my wife, I said, that was my fault. And she kind of looked at me. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, you are weird. Again, that toxic positivity.
All right.
And I said, I'm like, well, when's the last time I had the washer looked at? When's the last time I took it upon myself to clean it and make sure that everything was fine and look at the lines and make sure all these things, like it's my washer, not anybody else's. I bought it. It's mine. And it's illogical to think that way, truthfully. Like that's not the but when I think of it that way, I found it's the fastest way to alter my state of mind and change behavior as
Mhm.
quickly as possible. Because if I sit there and say it wasn't my fault and I buy another washer and just live my life, I'm not going to change and
Yeah.
ensure it never happens again. So I go the illogical route as a reaction to the situation, but it completely changes my behavior. So my new washer, I'm going to make sure that I check on it. Maybe put a 6 month reminder to pull out the back, make sure everything looks fine. Also, when they repaired everything, we paid above and beyond to have additional waterproofing so that if it was to ever happen again and I took every route, it wouldn't affect the main floor, which is where the majority of the damage was. So I've taken steps to go again above and beyond, but I wouldn't have taken that step without ultra accountability
Yeah.
from almost an illogical standpoint. And I would say the third one I would say is action. Is the moment I feel like something is coming down on me or a stressful situation or something that's really I'm starting to feel it. Maybe my hand is in too many cookie jars and I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I can't put it off. And there's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Where they talk about, food, shelter, all that stuff. But for me, it's from a social standpoint. Okay, I have a birthday dinner to go to, but my washer leaked. What's more important? And it's always playing this game of juggling life as it comes to you and
Yeah.
dealing with maybe you worked hard, for a month, worked all the stuff, signed new clients, sold a ton of books. You want to celebrate. Life happens. You got to deal with it because if you choose to prioritize the previous things, it'll quote unquote ruminate, right?
Yeah.
While you're out to your steak dinner, you're going to think about it, or while you're out celebrating with your kids, you're going to be like, oh no, like. And I feel that is that quick action, and those three things have been my strategy to deal with those things head on, and I try to deal with all of that in a positive manner. That's been my personal no experience with anybody else or no coaching. I kind of want to, hear your opinion on whether agreeing or disagreeing with me. What are maybe two or three strategies anybody listening that might be in a dark place? Because I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel like Christmas. And I know I have a unique circumstance. I'm out of my house, but
Right.
man, I was talking to my brother last night. Like it just something's weird about 2024. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the U.S. election or everything. Like I have no idea why. It does not feel like Christmas, and that has
Right.
a lot of people down. That has a lot of people
Yeah.
really struggling. So, what are some things that people, from your perspective, your more professional opinion than mine, piggybacking off what I said, that you really think can get people to at least start making the climb out of their struggles?
Yeah, I like your list. I like the three things that you do, and and it's working for you. So that's fantastic, and I think they're really good strategies that you're doing. And holding yourself accountable is so important because if you're blaming other people or you're not going to take accountability, then you're not going to be able to grow. For me, and I mentioned this in my book, Engage, Connect, Grow, is journaling. There's research that shows that journaling is hugely impactful in helping with mental health challenges. Just writing out your feelings, writing out even just the situation that's going on for you. There's mental health benefits and there's even physical benefits physiological benefits to it as well. They've seen that liver function is improved and immune cells have improved. Like it's crazy what they've just by writing out on a piece of paper. And writing it on a piece of paper is actually the best way. You can type it on your computer, but if you're writing on a piece of paper, it's healing. So, and you know that people have had diaries for years. Like there's a reason for that. It's helpful, and it's something that you can do, and you don't have to necessarily share it with anybody. In my book, I actually share my journal entries, a number of them, to help people see the progression of when I was like feeling really low and down about something, and then a year or two, 6 months later, where I was able to get to from journaling and the benefits of that. So that's been a key tool for me. And exercise is also something that I've recognized that when I'm in that down state or the confidence is going down, I if I reflect and look at how much I've been exercising in the last little while, that's a good indicator as to could be why my mind is not clear. I'm getting more frustrated than normal. So physical exercise is so important and eating healthy and sleeping. Like these are just basics. But those can go like if you're eating crap all the time, if you're drinking all the time, there's a reason why you're depressed. That if you're not consuming healthy things and consuming water and things are going to help your body, that's going to put you in a down state and affect your mood and your mindset and that as well. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I discovered journaling over COVID. Mutual friend of ours, Trevor Turnbull,
Yeah.
kind of got us doing some journal entries every single day, just writing things out. The cool thing with all that stuff is it's free.
Yeah.
Is Isn't that so great? It's not this big grandiose thing. It's not expensive
No.
counseling. It's none of that.
Yeah.
You can go for a walk. You can go play soccer in a field. You can, grab a piece of paper, buy a $5 journal on Amazon and go and journal that
Yeah.
way. I think that's really cool, man. And yeah, kudos to turning 50, by the way. That's a pretty big TSN turning point moment there.
Thanks. Haven't heard that in a
I'm,
while. Yeah.
yeah,
TSN turning
I'm
point. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of the podcaster Patrick Bet David or PBD podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I haven't yet. No.
Yeah, he's pretty incredible. So
Yeah.
he was quoting somebody. I don't know who he's quoting, so I'm going to quote PBD. But he read somewhere that a philosopher of some sort had said that a man has to do three things in his life in order to feel accomplished and purposeful. He said he needs to have a child, he needs to plant a tree, and he needs to write a book.
Hmm.
And so it sounds like you've accomplished at least two of those things. And I thought that was just really cool, kind of summarizing everything. It kind of had me thinking because, I got a daughter and a daughter on the way, but the whole
Nice.
journaling component, the fact that you have journal entries in a book could lead people to thinking maybe your life has been crazy enough to write a bestseller and just share your story, share your gifts. Whether you sell one book or a million, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. Or it's a book that you never publish and it's just your journal. That's your book, right?
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
thought that was kind of thought provoking a little bit, where those three things was kind of super cool.
Well, and I was in Boy Scouts as a kid. I planted many trees, so I haven't planted a tree in a while though. That's actually maybe I should do that before I turn 50. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a
Yeah.
cool concept.
That's a
So
really good concept. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, so well, Aaron, I want to thank you for your time today. I don't know if you want to close off on any messaging to anybody listening, and then we'll let you just sound off at the end with anything you want to share, where people can find you and stuff. But I don't know any closing thoughts or closing topic you want to discuss here.
There's a quote by a famous psychologist, Carl Jung, that I like to share with people, where he's quoted in saying that those who look outside dream and those who look inside awake or awaken. Uh, so I'd encourage anybody that's listening to this and looking to heal your depression or your mental state is to focus that healing internally. and not use external coping mechanisms to try to heal. You really go inside, and the more that you look at what's going on within you, the feelings that are going on inside of you, the thoughts, the beliefs, that is where the true healing, in my opinion, begins.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Where can people find you if people want to reach out to Aaron and maybe
Yeah.
sharing your services and look to kind of hire bring somebody on to help them with their struggles?
Yeah, so Instagram, Aaron Solly is my handle there. Engage Coaching Group is on and on Facebook. And if you go to engagecoachinggroup.com, there's actually a free resource there, 3 keys that you need to achieve to be able to thrive in your personal, professional, and family life. That is a free resource there, and you download that, you get access to a master class as well. So, might be helpful for people listening.
Nice. And then you said you have a book as well. Where can people find that?
Yeah, yeah. Engage, Connect, Grow is on Amazon. You can find it there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Aaron. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I can't wait to check out some of your stuff online a little bit more. And if anybody has any questions, they know where to find you. I'll put everything in the show notes. Everyone's going to have access to all this stuff. Thank you again for your time, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Unmodern Podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, like and follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Unmodern Podcast. Do you have suggestions for future guests, or if you're interested in being a guest yourself, please visit unmodernpodcast.com. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.